So you've probably heard about one-man hide-and-seek before. It's a paranormal game where you use a doll to summon spirits. Some would say it's stupid and doesn't work. Some would say it's dangerous. I agree with those who say it's dangerous, very dangerous. In fact, don't try this game at all. 2 weeks ago, I was watching some creepypastas as I enjoy creepy stuff like that. I was about to stop watching and go to sleep when I saw a video. It was titled, One Man Hide and Seek Paranormal Game. I, of course, instantly clicked on it. I was all about paranormal games. I tried Bloody Mary, the elevator game, and other stuff like that, with no results. So after watching the video and learning how to play, I decided to try it. I went into my attic and grabbed an old doll. I also found some red threads, rice, and other tools needed to perform the game. I began the game by filling the doll with rice and my own fingernail clippings like the video said to. I then stitched the doll up with the red thread and went into the bathroom. To play, you are instructed to name the doll, and I called her Mary. I turned on the bath and put Mary inside, let it fill up, and waited. I then continued the game as instructed. Everything went fine until it was Mary's turn to be it. "You're it, Mary. You're the new it, Mary," I chanted to the doll. I then left the room without turning back. A crucial instruction, the video said. I went into the hallway closet to hide. At first, things were pretty normal. I didn't hear any noises, and after 10 minutes without being found, I was about to give up. But then, I heard small footsteps down the stair. My heart began to race. I felt a mixture of terror and excitement. But the footsteps got louder and louder. I remember the video said, if you feel the doll is about to find you, you must end the game immediately. So as I heard the footsteps grow closer, I grabbed the glass of salt water required to play, and I poured some into my mouth, holding it there as instructed. I opened the closet door and found the doll sitting at the end of the hallway. My heart raced as I poured the glass of water onto the doll and spit the water from my mouth onto it as well. I couldn't believe it. The game had actually worked. I was so excited, and I had ended the game before Mary found me, so I assumed I was safe. I would later find out that I was very wrong. The weird things started happening the next day. It started with me finding Mary sitting in the kitchen. I know what you're thinking. What's weird about that? Well, I forgot to mention, I burned the doll after the game. So upon finding Mary perfectly fine sitting in the kitchen, I nearly had a heart attack. I grabbed the doll and threw it into the fire pit. I watched it burn. I stood there terrified watching the doll I had previously burned again. Every day after that, I would hear footsteps in the attic and on the stairs, but upon searching, I saw nothing. I began to get extreme anxiety. Every night, I laid in bed, paralyzed in fear. I played the game right, didn't I? What had I done wrong? I decided to rewatch the video to make sure I hadn't done anything wrong, but upon searching it, I found the video had been deleted by the uploader. I almost threw up when I saw this. I messaged the uploader through YouTube and emailed with no reply, but I did find myself blocked by the uploader. At this point, I was terrified. I was sure I had done everything right, so why was this happening to me? That's when I heard the small footsteps, but I didn't hear the footsteps from the attic, and I didn't hear them from the stairs. No, I heard them from right behind me. When I was 17, I moved to college 2 hours away from home and took residence in the dorms of campus. The dorms were not run through the school, but through a management company. There were a lot of safety problems in the dorms as a result of this. Assaults, ODs, drugs, shootings right outside, and etc. I am a female, weighing about 100 pounds, so I always watched out for serious situations around me. Everything was great. I had some awful roommates, but I was mostly left alone. One day in September, I was leaving for class early in the morning when I spotted a condom taped to my name tag on the door. It had a note that said, "Call me XOXO," with some random phone number. I told the RAs and nothing came of it. I just thought it was some random prank pulled by one of the guys on the floor. Things went south with my roommates, mostly because of my night terrors scaring them, even though I warned them before we even agreed to be roommates. So I was moved into a 2-bedroom dorm with my new roommate, Jay. We each had our own room. After a week of living there, I started noticing that things were appearing in the living room while we were sleeping. I asked her about it, but she kept denying that it was her doing. One day, we noticed that the lock on the front door did not lock properly. If you pull on the lock and twist the handle at the same time, the door would just come open. Around the same time, I started getting Snapchats of inappropriate things, vague threats, and offers for great sex. I would get ones that would say things like, "You look great today," with that specific article of clothing I was wearing. I filed a report to the dorms to get the lock fixed, but it took 4 months, 8 complaints, threat of legal action, and my friend D yelling at them to get any action. We got our door fixed, but the presence still appeared outside the door with notes for me. I was still receiving snaps, but I moved out of the dorms into an apartment with my then boyfriend. The Snapchats continued, then I started getting calls at my workplace. I worked for the dean's office of my college, and I was in charge of answering phones. Every day I would get 3 or more calls from randomly generated numbers. I only discovered it through apps like Viber and Skype after I reported it to the police and they investigated. I would answer the phone. CLAS Dean's office. "This is Fantapants. How may I help you?" I would hear heavy breathing for a few seconds, then they would hang up. I thought it was just some 12-year-old pulling pranks on our office. Well, that is, until my coworker got a call. She answered with her name, and the person on the line asked if they could speak with me. Thinking it was one of the deans that I had been working with, she forwarded it to my phone. I answered and I received the same heavy breathing and hung up. I reported it to my boss, but she did nothing. One of the deans overheard the conversation and reported it to Title IX. Talking to them was a mistake. After the meeting with them, the threats started getting worse and this person found my new apartment. One day in December, I was dog sitting 2 wonderful dogs who hated other dogs and would bark at them on sight. It was around 11 p.m. and I decided to take them out before bed. I get outside. To the right of mine is a bunch of thick trees that were hard to see through. I start to take the girls to the grass on the left. They start growling and barking at something in the trees. Thinking it's another dog, I try to pull them away, but they will not budge. I glance over, and out of the trees comes a tall man. But the weird thing is, he is wearing a Michael Myers-like mask. He starts rushing towards me. The dogs get in between me and him. He stops. I run up the stairs behind me into the apartment as he disappears into the trees again. Stupidly, I didn't call the cops, but I see him one more time before I move to my new apartment. Things are quiet for a while. My boyfriend and I break up, and I spend a few days in the new apartment alone. Come to find out the window that can be accessed from the ground doesn't lock. One morning I wake up, and everything seems normal. I check the mirror to do my hair for work. I have a bald spot. My head was shaved in the middle of the night. I find my hair tied up in knots like an envelope. That's when I immediately called the police, and they do an investigation. They find the window was broken but can't find anything to figure out who it was that came into my apartment. They asked me to compile a list of everything that went missing, and the only thing gone other than my hair was 3 pairs of dirty underwear. An investigation finds no one. I have since moved on, and I no longer answer phones at my work. In the end, I keep bear spray next to me, even when I sleep at all times. I met a guy this weekend. We were at the same restaurant. He was with a wedding party, and I was with the family. Not connected to the wedding people or couple in any way. I just happened to be at the same restaurant where the wedding reception was being hosted. He was polite and respectful, and offered me his number. I took it and decided to text him. We texted for a couple of days, and then made arrangements to get together for coffee. We got together in the middle of the day at a public place. I drove myself. I texted a friend and told her where I'd be and this guy's name. I figured I was being overly cautious. The first 3/4 of the conversation was normal enough. We talked about work, schooling, basketball, etc. It turned out he was a lot younger than I thought he was. He's 22 and I'm actually 35. He went from being kind of shy and very respectful to telling me a story about how the other night after the wedding he came home and people were being crazy. I asked what he meant, and then he elaborated to me. He had walked into his bedroom and lesbian girls I know were having sex on my bed. He was a gentleman and didn't stick around to watch, and then locked eyes and asked, "Have you ever been in that kind of situation before?" I said, "Well, I've lived in apartments, so I've heard people sometimes." He then pushed further and asked, "No, but have you ever walked in on something like that?" I said, "No, that's a weird story to tell someone you just met," and changed the subject. He talked about himself a lot. He did ask me questions, but would interrupt me when I tried to answer and continue to talk about himself. Something felt odd. He was not acting like he was the night I met him. He leaned in over the table a lot and made a noticeable effort to lock eyes with me. I like eye contact, but it felt more like a stare down after a while. I could feel myself moving away the further he leaned in. He started to talk about how he used to pick up girls, but he doesn't do that anymore because he realized that the girls he picked up at the bars were probably whores who went there every weekend. Then he wanted to know if I drank, smoked, did drugs, ever go to parties, where I went to parties, where did I like to go out to, and if I saw other men. Almost with no pauses. Question after question. We talked for a few minutes more, and he looked at his phone and said, "The game I wanted to watch is going to start soon. Do you want to get out of here?" Turns out there was a basketball game on, and he wanted me to come back to his place to watch it. I said, "No thanks. We just met, so I'm not really comfortable with that, but maybe we can talk again soon." His face sort of changed, and he said, "I'm sorry, but I really thought you were going to come back with me." I told him I wasn't sure how he got that impression. I had not at any point said I would do that. He kept asking me to come back to his place, and I kept saying no. He kept asking me why not, and I kept saying, I just met you, I'm not comfortable going back to your house. He said, fine, let's go to a park then. Red flags and alarm bells were going off, so I said, no thanks, I'm not really interested. He basically begged and said he'd even skip the game if I wanted him to. I said, no, just go home, we just met for coffee, it's not a big deal if we can't take it further today. He then asked me to take a walk in the field behind the coffee shop, looked at the ground, and literally said, I'll do anything you want, just don't leave. I said again, I wasn't going anywhere with him that day. Just please respect that and we'll talk about it later. I got into my car, and as he was pulling away, he yelled out his car window at me. I'm going to do everything I can to change your mind. Come over here. I sat and watched him leave because things just felt weird. I drove home and my phone was blowing up the whole time. He was texting and calling me, saying he was home and I should come over. Then he sent me a video of himself watching basketball on his couch, alone. He started sending me messages saying he could see a future with me, that I was the most beautiful woman he's ever met, that it was horrible for such a beautiful woman to be single, and that he liked our chances to be together. The entire coffee date was 40 minutes, maximum. He continues to ask me to come over. I said I was happy to meet him for coffee, but I had told him I wasn't going to come before, and was not going to go back on what I said. Then the calls really started. 7:55, 8 o'clock, 8:02, 8:07, 8:11. He called and called over and over for the next several hours. I texted him after the very first couple of calls. He had sent me yet another text saying how beautiful and perfect I was, and he wanted to date and travel together. All I could think was, I'm sorry, I don't feel the same way about you that you seem to me. I wish you well. Take care. He said he didn't understand. Did that mean I didn't want to see him again? So I replied with, I'm sorry for not being clearer. No, I don't want to see you again. I'm sorry. I wish you well. Goodbye. The calls and texts kept coming. I told him one time to please stop. I had to turn off my phone because it kept vibrating so much. The texts were all about, what did I do wrong? Why won't you tell me so I can fix it and make this work between us? I am really a great guy and I like you so much. You owe it to me to tell me. If you tell me, then I'll stop bothering you, but you have to tell me. I blocked his number, but my phone still logs call attempts from blocked numbers, so I could see he was still calling all night until 2 a.m. He called a few more times this morning and again this afternoon. I called my phone company this morning to check, and turns out he had sent me over 2,000 text messages in that one day. That was a tipping point, and I decided to go to the police station and at least talk to them and possibly report it as suspicious behavior or harassment. All I had was his first name, which I'm pretty sure was only a nickname, and a phone number. The cops were really nice and took down all the information I had. He had never threatened me, but I had told him to stop and he wouldn't. They said that was enough to be concerned. I showed them the texts and the timing of his calls, and they said it definitely looked like obsessive and unstable behavior. And it was good that I came in, even just to put it on record in case things go wrong. I felt so bad for even going there, like it was so stupid to have even gone to meet him. But I've been on a lot of coffee dates and no one has ever done this kind of thing before. After I left the station, I got home and checked my phone. I had 3 voicemails from unknown numbers, and it was from him. pleading for me, to call him, to tell him how to make it right. He doesn't understand why I blocked him. Did he message me too much? Was it a bad move to call me 80 times in a night? Why wouldn't I just talk to him? I recorded the voicemails and sent them to the police, alongside with screenshots of the messages and logs from my phone company. Now, I'm low-key terrified of what will happen next. Will the cops call him? If they do, will it make him mad? I'm pretty sure I didn't tell him anything about where in the area I lived in, or where I work. And all he had was my phone number, no Facebook, WhatsApp, or other social media. I considered changing my cell phone number, but I'm also hoping that he'll get the point after a few days of silence and give up. He's been texting and calling me from random numbers all day. I've been taking screenshots and sending them to the police with my report number. It's been a long, exhausting day. I really want to change my number, but he keeps sending me stuff and I feel like it might be helpful to the police to figure out who he actually is. I have informed my family, friends, employer, cell phone provider, and building caretakers about this crazy pants and even given everyone a description. I went out and bought 100 plus decibel alarms for the windows and doors in my apartment and installed them. I am in Canada, so I can't legally carry mace, but I'm looking at alternatives. Today, he wrote me a really long-winded message asking for another chance and begging forgiveness. He said, I was just overly excited to meet such a beautiful woman, and that he needed just one chance to show you my true worth. Pleading and pleading for me to reply and meet up with him. He signed his name at the bottom. I had heard it slightly wrong and didn't have the right spelling in my phone. I went on Facebook and found his profile. He had 0 security settings. He's not friends with anyone I know. I copied that link and sent it off to the cops. I am torn between really hoping they can talk some sense into him and being terrified that if the police confront him, that he'll even become more crazy. I would have slept easier if I'd have changed my number right away. But I might never have got his real name and profile if I had. I doubt the cops will do much until he starts threatening me. Do I change it and sleep better at night? Or let him keep screaming into the silence while I collect more evidence? Is it worth it?